Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. Still on a little bit, just a little bit of a high, I guess. A natural high, my friends. After watching the Pacers defeat the New York Knickerbockers over the weekend, going to the NBA Finals. I talked about that briefly last hour. I'm not going to do it this hour. But I am reserving the right. To talk about this in the days and weeks to come as they play the Thunder in the finals. By the way, when I was a kid, this reminds me, this gives you an idea into the mentality of my upbringing. My mother used to make Rice Krispie treats. Seeing if Oz was knowing where this is going. And when we were in high school, you got, as teenage boys, my brother and I, we would have friends over, and, that pan of Rice Krispie treats would vanish in about 11 seconds. And I remember my father, he would say, I reserve one row. That was his attempt to try to secure one row of the Rice Krispie treats before my brother and I and our friends ate the entire pan of Rice Krispie treats. Like that, I reserve the right to talk about the Pacers in the days and weeks to come. My friends, I got lots. In fact, I want to continue a little bit longer talking about the real men and politics, because that's what we were talking about last hour. The Democrats have spent $20 million studying how they can talk to men, how they can get men to buy into their anti-masculine worldview. It's crazy. It's like they can't see the obvious. They can't see the forest for the trees. No real man is going to sign up for that. Now, can they be tricked into this? Can they, buy into the notion that the Democrat Party is trying to save the working class man and all that? Yeah, that's a possibility. The Democrats have a ton of work to do. But as far as it comes to their manlyhood, the left has attacked it. The left is run by radical man haters. It's just the truth. And now they're trying to figure out how to get the men. Now they're realizing they need men to win elections. This is rich in so many ways. I stopped. I was playing a clip at the end of the last segment, which we'll pick back up on, I think, where 4 women on The View were woman-splaining to the Democrats how they can get men to vote for them. I mean, it's just crazy. This whole thing is craziness, and I'll play this. We'll have fun with this. I want to talk about that. I want to get to other things in the stack of stuff as well. Friends, in the meantime, if you are a person who requires some sleep, which all of us do, let me tell you about MyPillow. MyPillow has some quality pillows. I have one of those pillows. I love it. There's 2 reasons I like it, love it. Number 1, I like that it is it's got a patented adjustable fill, so it will basically mold to whatever shape I need, which can be a really interesting shape because I'm a side sleeper. I got a big head and I've got broad shoulders. And so that pillow has to be able to fit in there and give my neck support. It does a great job of that. The other thing I like about the particular pillow I have is that it has the cooling technology. One of my most hated things in this world is trying to sleep hot. I can't do it. When I was a kid, I didn't grow up. We didn't have air conditioning when I was a kid. We ended up getting window airs when I was probably in high school. Made a huge difference. But I remember days sweating in bed. No, there was not. There was one night I remember it was still 90 at 10 o'clock at night, and I mean that's tough to sleep in. I was on the east side of the house. There was no breeze. Whatever. I hate sleeping hot. My Pillow helps me avoid that. So, if you want to check out their pillows or their other products, including their luxurious sheets, their fantastic towels that actually dry you, their slippers, their dog beds, a whole lot more, go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Todd. You're going to get discounts on your shopping there. mypillow.com, promo code Todd, my friends, is how you get your discount. All right, so last hour talking about the left. Actually, I'm going to back this up a little bit. The Democrat Party talking about how to get men to vote for them again. Because real men stopped voting for them. I'm queuing this up. But real men stopped voting for the Democrat Party. Because why would they? Why would they vote for the Democrat Party? The left attacks the patriarchy, what they call the patriarchy here. When they attack the patriarchy, what they're really saying is we've basically let men have too much say in our society. The Democrat Party attack men. They attack what they call toxic masculinity. I've been through this. Masculinity is not toxic. There's toxic behavior of individuals, but masculinity is not a toxic thing. Masculinity was created by God. He created them male and female, right? He created masculinity. He created femininity. And those things can be abused. Hear me say it. Just like he created the ability for us to talk, but we can use our words to say bad things, to lie to people, to spread rumors, to incite hatred. That can be done with our words, but talking is not a bad thing. Masculinity, likewise, is not a bad thing, but there are people out there that have abused who have used their masculinity in ways that's not good. Likewise, there's been people who've used their femininity. This is not femininity to get things that do things that aren't good. This is not people are people at the end of the day. Men are not worse than women. Women are not worse than men. I know that there's inclinations of both sexes to say the other party is always to blame, but let's be fair here. That's simply not the truth of the matter. Now, I would say that we're on a swing to where women have been, I think there were large swaths of history where men probably did more, bad with their masculinity than women did. But I feel like we've swung the other direction now to where there's plenty of the other happening as well. Regardless of your thoughts and opinions on that, the bottom line is that the Democrat Party hates men. And now they're paying people that don't understand men to study men and to tell the Democrat Party how to talk to men. That's what they're doing. They're spending $20 million on this. Probably, I'd love to see the people who are studying the men. Do you think that they've got people in there studying men that they themselves are masculine? I mean, I can just imagine they bring these men in to their whatever, their little conference room or whatever, and they're studying them like it's a specimen. They're looking at them like they're a Sasquatch or something. These people studying these folks wouldn't know masculinity if it smacked them up the side of the head. And it reminds me, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Millionaire Next Door. The Millionaire Next Door. It's a good book. It's an older book. But there were some folks that were researching first-generation Deca millionaires. And this was a little bit further in our past where Deca millionaire actually meant real money. But the people that did the study, they set up, that they had wine, they had expensive alcoholic drinks, they had caviar, a bunch of food that they thought would appeal to these folks. And they brought these folks in, and it's at the very beginning of the book. And as the authors are explaining the kind of the mood and feel in that conference room when they had their focus group come in, and they said everybody was sitting there, nobody touched the expensive alcoholic beverages, no one touched the caviar, this fancy high-end food, that people didn't know. A lot of folks were dressed in ways they weren't expecting. And one of these folks, one of these Deca millionaires, they were having a dialogue with one of the researchers, and he made the comment, "I drink two kinds of alcohol, beer and free," is what he said. And that was the beginning of their understanding as to who this generation of first generation Deca millionaires were. They were people who did things that they ran plumbing businesses, or they did things that they weren't all from Silicon Valley or whatever the equivalent was in those days. That's not who they were. They weren't flashy, right? Some of them, they all had their thing, right? They all had their thing. Somebody might have really splurged on a nice watch, but they didn't have a top-end watch, the highest designer clothes, the most expensive car. They didn't do that. In fact, the most common car, according to the research that these folks drove, was a older Ford F-150. I remember this in the study. I say all this to say, this is how these researchers for the Democrat Party are looking at the men, the masculine men that walk in that room. They have no idea who they are dealing with. They know nothing about these folks. In fact, I wish the men that walked in that room realized that the problems you have with people attacking you as a masculine man today, to whatever degree that happens in your personal life or just in society at large, it's caused by those people sitting across from you on that table. It's caused by the people who are studying you, who are trying to figure out how to talk to you. They are the cause of at least some of your pain. Now, we all have personal choices. I'm not trying to say everything's somebody else's fault. I'm saying that those researchers who have helped Democrats with their messaging, who are completely just insanely wild on the political spectrum, they're far to the left. They hate masculinity. They don't know anything about it. They've also attacked these men. For those who are white men, they've attacked them for whiteness as well. They've ridiculed them. They've put them down for being stupid hayseed hicks, for not understanding how much smarter they would be for going to college. None of this is true, by the way. Listen, if you want to go to college, that's your prerogative. But to tell all people that they have to go to college to make something of their lives is beyond stupid in this world. In today's world, there might have been a time when some of these things were truer than they are now. But the reality of the situation is that these manly men, these masculine men that are doing things, whatever they're doing, it makes no difference to me what they're doing, but the Democrats are targeting them specifically for being blue-collar workers, so they're working with their hands. They can make an extremely good living and don't need the left telling them how to live their lives. It's a remarkable thing to watch these leftists study these men. Now, that being said, I played a little bit of the clip. Sarah Haynes, in the last hour, I played a clip from her trying to... She's kind of right in saying that Democrats are doing this the wrong way. Instead of saying, how do we attract men, there's, with the things that we're doing, the policies that we're enacting, they're trying to figure out how do we, use just words, not new ideas, not anything else, just the new way to communicate it. How do we use words differently to trick these folks into voting for us? And that's a messed up way of doing it. And it's one of the things, excuse me, it's one of the reasons being a conservative is vastly superior. I don't have to think about what... Let me take a half a step back. I've interviewed people on this program before. I will not mention to you the names, but I remember them saying on the program, who am I talking to? Now, there's a part of me that says, okay, I understand that to a point, right? I understand if you're talking to kids, which we're not on this program. I mean, some kids are tuned in and with their parents, which nieces and nephews are on here sometimes. To your homework kids, listen to mom and dad. But the truth is that this is designed to speak to kids. We're talking to adults, right? They're adults that fit into general demographic groups or whatever, age and so forth, types of, there's commonalities between the listener. And so I understand, if you're talking to a certain group, you might want a certain approach to a certain group might be better. And I'm okay with that unless you're trying to say, I want to change my message. An approach with children is different than an approach with people who are former Democrats who are now Republicans, or people who are lifelong Republicans. You might talk a little bit differently. You might feel like, hey, I can get more into the details if someone has been following this stuff for 20 years versus if they're a brand new person to politics. I understand that. But when I was asked that question before, sometimes it felt like they were saying, I'm trying to decide what I want to say. I'm trying to decide who I want to become today. And that's a big problem. But that's how politics is run, and that's how these folks are doing this. And so Sarah Haynes said the Democrats should try to find ways to basically appeal to men by solving their problems. And I said, that's kind of a good point, except these men don't want you to solve their problems. They actually want you to get out of the way of their problems, Sarah. Then we have Alyssa Farah Griffin, I'm going to play her soundbite now, where she's going to talk about this as well. But again, we've got a group of women on The View, mostly liberals and leftists, trying to explain to men, woman-splaining, how the Democrat Party can attract masculine voters. We continue with this.
Is authenticity like spending $20 million to pay consultants and strategists and focus groups to tell you how to talk to a certain audience? It specifically says to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these male spaces. Like, what made Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn or some of these manosphere guys huge was there's a level of authenticity. I've listened to a lot of both of them. I don't agree with a lot of what they say, but there's an entertainment value, and this is just somebody shooting the you-know-what. It's not this like structured, hyper, I have to think about what I'm going to say, I have to consider it 20 different ways, focus group it, and test it. And I think that's where what Democrats are missing is there's like some sort of an authenticity problem that they have. But I also would note, Joe Rogan was a
I'm going to play that part.
Democrats actually lost Joe Rogan. They had their own Joe Rogan and then alienated him with policies. And the most common things that I hear from men who came around to supporting Trump and maybe were open to other alternatives was they feel like they want to be able to provide for the future and build wealth. And they don't want to be ashamed to say that they want to provide and they want to have money. And then they do see these statistics of how men are falling behind, and they want to be able to highlight it and talk about it, but not be pushed back that you're saying, oh, well, you're excluding girls and women if you want to advance men. And finally, this idea that they feel like even when they're well-intentioned, they're like one misstatement away from getting canceled. Like, I think we need to have a culture that's more forgiving if people are trying their best, if they don't use the right terminology, if they don't use the right phrase. As long as their intention is there, this sort of like crazy cancel culture has really turned young people off.
Yeah. Okay. So she's on to the right general path here. She talked about Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, saying that there's an authenticity there. There's just they're talking to men. They're sitting around shooting the you-know-what, as she said. But they're authentic. They're authentic. And she says Democrats are lacking that. Of course they're lacking that. Politicians lack that. The entirety of the political profession is designed to make you, the voter, me, the voter, have a certain feeling about that person that's positive, whatever it is. They don't even care how they have to connect it. They just want you to think, wow, politician X, good guy, like him. That's what they want. It doesn't even matter why. And so it's the opposite of authentic. Folks, today's Todd Talk, I actually talked about reason, the ability that Americans have to reason, which I think we've lost a huge chunk of that in today's world. The average American and his or her ability to reason and to engage in discourse. And I said on the Todd Talk, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically I said, look, part of being, I've said this on this program, one of the signs of being a mature adult is to be able to entertain an idea without necessarily accepting it. And I made the comment that I find it incredibly helpful to be able to fairly, hear the word that I say, fairly summarize the viewpoints of my political opponents, and then to be able to articulate that fairly, not with any intention to, get a snide remark in or to, stab them in the back or, slap them across the face with kindness, just to genuinely be able to say, I think this is what you're thinking on this issue. Am I right? And I found that generally, as a conservative, I'm tremendously better at this than they are. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I think that this applies to a big chunk of conservatives, because we understand these things intellectually. For the left, a lot of this stuff is about feeling. And then, of course, they've amped up the feelings by saying, if you're a leftist, if you're a Democrat, if you're a person who's a liberal, anyone who doesn't agree with you is a racist, is a sexist, is a homophobe. And they have created this monster, my friends, not us. And so you lose the ability to be authentic operating in that environment. It's disingenuous. It's not true. It's not real. And not only that, dare I say, Joe Rogan is a real man, right? She points out he was a Bernie bro. The left lost him. But look at why the left lost him. The cancel culture, the anti-masculinity position taken by the left. I mean, it's remarkable. You have successful men are often the ones who are criticized the most in this society. Which again, listen, if it's just coming from randos in society, fine. But if it's coming as a concerted effort of the Democrat Party's messaging, you're not going to attract these people. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with being successful and making money. You know, you can be greedy and be wealthy. You can be greedy and not have much, materially speaking. Greed is a condition of the heart. And if you're one who doesn't have much and you're trying to take things that don't belong to you, that belong to somebody else, I would say that you've fallen into the greedy bucket. More to say about this, my friend. I got more to say about several things, but I have to take a time out. Before I take that time out, my friends, let me remind you that every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of America that we want to live in. And when you give your money to woke businesses, you are fueling the woke machine. That's why we launched Freedom Marketplace. It is a directory that is free for you to use. Hear me say that. It is free to you. It's a directory of businesses that align with your conservative principles and values. These businesses have made a promise, my friends, to you and to me that they're not going to support leftist candidates, leftist causes, and if they break that promise, they're kicked to the curb. They're out of the directory. That's how serious we are about that. So if you're tired of funding the woke agenda, visit freedommarketplace.net. It's free and it's easy. Liberty and business for all, my friends. I've got to take a time out. You're listening here to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I got one more clip to play from this group of women. Woman-splaining how the Democrat Party can get men to vote for Democrats again after demonizing men for a long time. This time it's Joy Behar. This is a very short clip. This was a longer conversation, a bunch of, they get close sometimes, but they also, they have no clue. They have no clue how much damage the Democrat Party, or at least they don't want to admit it, how much damage the Democrat Party has done regarding its, its reputation with real men. Real men want nothing to do with the sophists and the pretenders and the man-haters in the Democrat Party. But not to be outdone with anything said in the segment, Joy Behar jumps in and she does what she always does, says something idiotic. Listen to what she says. This goes quickly. This is a short clip, but I just want you to listen to what she says about, again, this idea of the Democrat Party spending $20 million to try to get men to support Democrat candidates again. Here it is.
To the folks you want to know what I think? Yes. I think it's a waste of money. Maybe these guys should spend their money on teaching men to not be such sexists. Maybe that's
it. But the stats don't bear that out now.
Thank you.
The audience claps.
The election results. Donald Trump.
There you go. So she says, I think it's a waste of money. I agree with her on this. It is a waste of money. But she says, I think they should spend their money on teaching men not to be sexist. Now listen, ladies out there, I know there are men who are sexist. there are men who are legitimately sexist and think that they're better than women and all of that. I grant you that. But the vast majority of men are not. The vast majority of men don't hate women. In fact, the vast majority of men, I wish more women would understand this, men want to take care of, provide for their women. Now, there's always exceptions. I get it. I understand. I know there's some bad men, and maybe you've had some bad men in your life, and I'm not here to defend that. I'm not here to defend that at all. We've all seen that. We've all seen that. And actually, that's something else real men do. I've shared the story when we were on the walking, my son and I, in Washington, D.C. He was younger, smaller. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. I saw a man, and he was with a young man, young girl. She was trying to get away. He kept cutting her off. He wasn't doing anything that like crossed the line, but you could tell that the emotions had gotten to the point to where it was close to something happening. And she would walk to the right. He would cut her off and kind of grab her, not, just put his hands on her to just try to get her to listen. It wasn't, violent or anything like that, but it was the emotions were getting amped up. And she would turn left and he would cut her off, and she was upset visibly, and she was trying to get away. And I'm watching this. And I'm a guy, again, that's grown up here in, small town USA. I can't not say anything. So I told my son, I said, hold on, buddy. I got to go over here and address this. And I went over there and I looked at the girl. I kind of ignored the guy. And I pointed my finger at him and I said, is he bothering you? And she looked at me like deer caught in the headlights. And he starts to chime in. And I said, I'm not talking to you. I said, I'm talking to her. Is he bothering you? And she's dead silent. She looks at me like she doesn't know what to say. He says, that's my girlfriend. I say, doesn't look like it to me. He said, we're just having a fight. I said, I can see that. I said, is he bothering you? Again, she says nothing. She starts to walk away. There's nothing I can do. My point is simply saying that there are lots of men that would have done that. Some man might have co-cocked the guy. I don't know. But that's my impression. And that's my experience, which I consider that a healthy thing to do. And it's a good thing to have healthy men in your society for things just like that. Just like that. And for plenty other reasons as well. But it sounds like Joy Behar has only been around leftist men, I guess. She thinks that, what'd she say here? You know what I think? I think it's a waste of money, she says. Maybe these guys should spend their money on teaching men not to be such sexists. Maybe that's it. So she wants to double and triple down. She thinks that the way to get men to vote for the Democrats is to tell them that they're more sexist than they are. And listen, folks, we are way too sensitive in this world today. When I was in D.C., I had a good friend. He's Chicano. I got to tell you, I didn't know what that meant until Joel told me this. Joel told me he's Chicano. He's from Compton. We were roommates for a bit. We became good friends. I still occasionally text him. In fact, I've been texting him. He's a Lakers fan. I'll text him. In fact, I might text him today and say, hey, when do the Lakers play again? Because the Pacers play Thursday. Now, you got to keep in mind, I can't say that often. He's been able to say that and tease me a lot more than vice versa. But I'm going to get my shots in while I get the chance. But it's all done in good fun. That's the thing. And so Joel's Hispanic. I'm a white guy, and we would have playful banter. But it wasn't. Listen, there's times when men want to tease women about, being women. That's just how we're wired. It's not genuine sexism. It's just having a little bit of fun and humor. And my goodness, we've lost the ability to do that as a culture. How many truly sexist men are there out there? And if your answer is all of them, I would suggest maybe finding a new group of men to be around. I would suggest possibly at some point looking in the mirror and saying maybe there's something wrong with me, because that's not true, that all men are sexist. It's just, we've just gotten, maybe you've been hurt. I get that. And that can make us really, really be jaded. But the left has created this problem. The left now acts like they want to solve this problem when all they want to do, and this is to me the greatest takeaway of this entire thing, all they want to do is make it look like they become the party that these men want. It's not an actual change. It's not legitimate. They know. The left knows what they're going to do politically. They just want to basically trick enough people into supporting it, even people who disagree with it, to give them a reason to support it, right? Just like they were totally cool with voters wanting to vote for Obama in 2008 because he had a nice jump shot or whatever. They don't care. It makes no difference. They just need permission. They just need enough consent from the governed to implement their crazy, to give them the power to implement their crazy agenda. So that's where the left is today, my friends. So I want to play this too. I referenced this off the top. This is going to be a different, we're switching gears. Actually, since we're switching gears to make a clean break, take a deep breath here. Let me do that first. And let me ask you a question, my friends. Would you rather take 2 Solti soft gels a day or spend hours in your doctor's office talking about your cholesterol? Listen, there's a time and a place for that. You may love your doctor. I like my doctor. At least that's what I tell him to his face. No, I think he's great. But I don't want to spend a lot of time in there talking about my cholesterol, especially if there's just something else I can do about it, my friends, because there is a good place to start, and that is with a product called Solti. It's an all-natural product. It has been clinically proven to lower cholesterol. It's been proven, science has spoken. It may be able to do the same for you, my friends. And so that's a great first place. I'm not telling you not to go to your doctor, but man, if you could start with no prescriptions, no doctor's visits, none of that stuff, that's a good place to start, my friends. And we need you healthy in this country. Your family does, your church does, your community does, your business does, your friends do, and we do in this country, my friends. So stay healthy. Take good care of your heart health. You can start by going to Solti.com, SOLTEA, Solti.com. Promo code Todd will save you 50%, 50, save half on your first 3-month supply and get free shipping, my friends. It's affordable. It's a great place to start. I take the product. Check it out. Solti.com, promo code Todd is how you do that. All right, I just got a minute here to cue this up, and I'm going to play this soundbite in the next segment. Again, switching gears a little bit here. Headline, WokeSpy.com, Trump advisor Stephen Miller gets CNN host clucking and flustered. Their headline in words, not mine. So Stephen Miller is on CNN. They're talking about illegal immigrants. Of course, CNN wants to use a phrase called, undocumented migrants. There's a back and forth about this, and Stephen Miller calls this host out. On top of that, questions the use of deceptive language that's designed to, as he puts it, obscure the truth. So I want to play this, my friends, as soon as we get back from the break in our last segment of the hour. But in the meantime, I've got to take that break, my friends. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I am your host, the one and only Todd Huff, the ever so benevolent host behind the microphone here. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. It was in college when I first learned this, or was able to, articulate this. And I think I learned this from the time that I was in a debate with people in Washington, D.C. at American University. We were debating abortion. One of the girls, she called me anti-choice. She said, well, you're just anti-choice. And I said, I tell you what. See, normally what happens is someone says, I'm not anti-choice, like this, that, the other. I'm not. They get on the defensive. I said, forget that. I don't care what you call me. I'll tell you what. I'll let you call me that when you let me call you anti-life. And I'll never forget the look on her face. It's as though she never stopped for a minute to even consider that's exactly what she was doing to me. That context is king. Nuance is necessary in these discussions. Yes, I guess I'm against the choice of someone to murder a person, but that's a crazy way to frame it, in my opinion. And I learned then, or I understood then enough to put it into words, that the person who sets the terms of the debate and the rules of the debate typically ends up winning the debate. So it's with that in mind that I want to play this next soundbite. So Stephen Miller is on with CNN. He's on with CNN. He's being asked about something pertaining to illegal immigration, and particularly a reference to an illegal immigrant. So, that being said, I want you to listen to this exchange, and I love what Stephen Miller does here. We need to see more of this being done to call out this nonsense in real time. But this is an important sort of discourse. It's what's happening to so many Americans. They fall victim to this crap without even realizing that it's being done to them. Here it is.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem posted a stunning allegation saying that an undocumented migrant sent a letter threatening to kill the president, promising to self-deport after the assassination. CNN reporting shows that investigators believe the migrant was set up. It was a victim of a setup. What is the administration going to do now? And this is an undocumented immigrant. I do want to note that, but this was someone who came forward, was a victim of a crime, and now law enforcement believes he was set up. Go ahead.
Well, I want to clarify what you mean, so we're talking about the same thing. Are you saying this immigrant was here illegally?
Yes, but I am, and that's why I said that. I clarified that.
You said undocumented, and I wasn't clear what that means. I'm assuming they have a fake ID. I'm assuming they have a fake social security number.
That's neither here nor there. That's getting away from the question,
country.
Stephen. I want this to be, and call me naive, a good faith discussion about what's happening right now.
But when we use language that's designed to obscure the truth, that's not good faith.
All right, does this risk
an illegal alien? They're not an undocumented migrant.
Okay, that's fine. That's another discussion for another day.
I don't know the details of the assassination threat. All I can say, based on what you're telling me, is there's an illegal alien in our country who's making menacing threats. Regardless of the facts or circumstances, we don't want him here. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and I would gladly come back on when I have more information to share
They were set up, just to be clear. But quickly, where is the White House on habeas corpus?
The illegal alien was treated unfairly. Yes, I'm sure the illegal alien was treated very unfairly.
Where is the White House on?
Yeah, so that whole there's a lot going on there. Number one, the facts of the, well, again, who knows the facts? This is what's being reported. An illegal alien, as she puts it, an undocumented migrant. The links they go to obscure what's really going on. This is someone who's in this country illegally. But instead of just stating that, they try to make it sound as, as normal and just like a processing error. They just didn't have the right paperwork. They're waiting on the card in the mail sort of thing. That's not the case. They entered the country illegally. And so, according to reports, again, who knows what she's saying here, if it's true or not. She works at CNN. But the reports are that an illegal alien threatened the life of the president of the United States. The administration obviously tried to stop this, to do something about it, and deport them. And so she's basically saying, why are they being, they're being targeted for false reporting? Well, maybe someone else needs to be, held accountable for something. I don't know, for false reports to law enforcement or some such thing. But the person's here illegally. Listen, what they don't want you to know, what they don't want me to know, what they're trying to hide from the American people, is that if you are here illegally, you shall be deported. You don't have to be here illegally and trying to assassinate somebody. You don't have to be here illegally and be a member of MS-13. You don't have to be here illegally and be involved in human trafficking or drug trafficking or anything like that. You don't have to be here illegally and anything else. If you are here illegally, you can be deported as to the letter of the law. That is how it works. There's a process. It's different from the due process we receive if we're charged with a crime criminally here in the United States. This is a crime that says, they've been charged with being here illegally. Can they prove that they are someone who should be here? If they can't, they're then deported. I mean, this is not complicated, but it's made complicated because of phraseology and questions like this. The purpose here is to obscure the truth, as Stephen Miller says. This sort of thing is reprehensible. When people say fake news, when they say the media is deceptive, when they point out that the media has an agenda, that the media is not simply engaged in reporting, this is why. It's like so cooked into the equation, she almost doesn't even understand it. She says she wants to have a good faith discussion, but she wants to use words that obscure the truth. Anyway, folks, I gotta go. SDG.